Afternoon, everyone. Happy Friday. There's been quite a lot in the news today. It's all really quite exciting. Well, moderately exciting. There's lots of individually moderately exciting things in the news. In Britain, I suppose it's the results. Reform UK had a couple of bad results. They had a particularly bad one in Wales. They were polling ahead and they lost. Plaid beat them quite comfortably. I mean, Labour lost as well, but Labour already nailed on for the loss for various reasons. Now, I do have a video about that coming out shortly after the stream, so I'm going to focus on the income tax bit first, but then inevitably we'll talk about the by-election too. But I'm just going to put up a poll to begin with. But I just want to be clear here. It says, can Labour risk an obvious breach of the manifesto? So what I'm saying here is, it's not a case of should Rachel Reeves increase income tax or not, because that's difficult to judge. The question really is, let's say Labour thought that that was the best way to do it. Do you think they'd get away with it? Or do you think it's going to be another winter fuel thing? Because I have to say, it's very politically risky. So the question is purely not about whether you think it's the right economic decision, but can they, if they had to do it, can they get away with it? So I'll stick it out and we shall see what we get. I'll leave it up there for a bit. We don't have to do it straight away. So because James has said there, tax rises, but for the wealthy, £100,000 a year incomes. Yeah, that's so okay. So let's say you did think that Labour can get away with it. It's obviously, this is a clear breach of the manifesto, isn't it? I mean, when they increased employers' national insurance last year, there are some people go, probably not. Everyone who can read political speak in a manifesto knows full well that Labour were not excluding that. So that wasn't a breach of the manifesto. Some people argue either way, but everyone knew it. I keep saying, even the Tories during the election campaign itself, they were screaming, Labour are going to put up employers' national insurance. The reason why they say for working people, they're giving themselves a get out clause so they can do it on employers' national insurance. And they were dead right. They were. But let's say you had to, it is dodgy. Let's say you had to do it. Let us say you had to do it. And putting up income tax, because the reality of the situation is when people say, oh, just tax this or tax that or tax the other. And I've said, I think land tax, at the moment, say unoccupied land, tax that. But let's say that it would take too long or something like that. Even though I still think they should be announcing something like that. If you've got a hole to fill, the three biggest taxes, and I'm going to actually, I should have looked them up before. So you've got income tax, national insurance and VAT. They are the three biggest contributors. Let me just have a look. Let's see if I can easily find the specific percentage. I should have looked them up before. UK Parliament. Let's have a look. Let's see if there's a really easy chart. Here it is. Yeah, there is one. This is the very up to date. This is up to date. This is the last tax year. So we've got income. It hasn't got percentages. I can't. If I'd done it in advance, I could have worked them out. Never mind. Income tax, 305 billion. The whole tax revenues, by the way, was 1.136 trillion. So £1,136 billion was the total tax revenues in the last tax year. Of that, 305 billion was from income tax. So that's over a quarter. The next one is VAT on 172 billion. So straight away, and the other one, national insurance, is 171 billion. So basically, income tax brings in not quite VAT and national insurance combined, but not far off, right? So income tax is by far your biggest. So if you needed to fill a big hole, you could, in theory, get, if you increase income tax by a small amount, you could it's the easiest way to fill the hole, is what I'm saying. Now, if you were going to do it, then there's another question. So if you were going to do it, and I think it would be politically dodgy, I think if you come straight out, because everyone knows it wasn't just a manifesto promise, it was a big one. There are some promises in a manifesto where, like, I don't think there's ever been a manifesto in history where no promises were broken. I think every government ever has broken at least some manifesto promises, right? I cannot think of a single manifesto that was ever fulfilled fully, even given ambiguities in part of it, right? But there are some parts of the manifesto, because they weren't that big a deal to the election, you get away with. Most people didn't even know it was in there. And there are some things you make a big fuss about. I think this is one of the things they made a big fuss about. So, yeah. But if you were going to do it, then there's another question. And I know some people may answer this based on their own circumstances, but if we try and be like a bit more objective, your choice would be, let's say you could increase the base rate by 1%. So that means everyone pays 1% extra income tax, like literally everyone. Or you increase an upper band by a larger amount. Now, my instinct in that one would be to say you would probably get away with a larger amount further up the scale. Because if you increase the base rate by 1%, then that is disproportionately hitting lower paid workers. Because, so where it works out, by the way, you have, I forget what it is exactly, it's about 12,500 your personal allowance. So you don't pay any income tax on your first like 12.5 grand of income. Then you pay, oh crap, is it 25% at the moment? 25% on from about 12,500 to 50, roughly 50,000. It's thereabouts 50,000. And then after that you pay 40% up to about, what is it? It's about 125,000, and then after that it's 45%. So if you just increase the base rate by 1%, you're going to, like, anyone under 50 grand is just paying 1% more income tax, and that's all there is to it. Whereas technically, if you don't put up the other bands as well, anyone earning over £50,000, which is well above the national average, anyone earning over £50,000 will be paying less than 1% extra income tax, if you see what I mean. Because they'll be paying 1% like everyone else on their base rate, but if the additional rate or the higher rate doesn't go up, then they won't be paying that. Basic rate's 20%. Oh, is it? Sorry, 20%. But either way, the point is, if you're earning less than 50 grand a year, you'd just be paying straight up 1% higher tax. But if you earned more than £50,000 or significantly more than £50,000 a year, you'd be paying an increase in income tax, but it would be less than 1% higher, and yet you've got more money. So I would think I'd be very hesitant to say, and I know it's the easiest way to do it is literally just put 1% on the base rate and call it quits. But it would be a breach of the manifesto. I can see there's already on the poll and a majority for saying Labour wouldn't actually get away with this. But it would be a breach of the manifesto, really clear, no getting away from it. I tell you something though, there is a way of increasing income tax without breaking the manifesto. I have pointed this out before. There is a way of increasing income tax without breaching the manifesto. Because Labour's manifesto didn't promise not to raise income tax. It was more specific than that. They promised not to raise the rate of, they promised not to raise the base, the higher and additional rates of income tax. So they promised not to raise the rates of those three specific bands. They didn't promise not to add an extra band. So they actually could add, now again, there might be good reasons not to do it, but they could add, in theory, an extra band that applies on income greater than, say, £250,000 a year, that goes from 45% to 50%. If that would do the same thing, it might not do the same thing, but if it did. Cannabis legislation would bring in billions. No, that's not politically viable. You have to, again, this is what the aim of the poll is. Is it even politically viable to put up income tax? It may not be. The reason why it'd be, where am I getting this from, by the way? It's a Guardian. It's in the Guardian. Reeves considers breaking Manifesto pledge with income tax rise to fill £30 billion gap. Now, the reason why the Guardian will be reporting on this is the Treasury will have leaked it to them. So they will be testing the public waters here. They'll be testing public opinion. That's anything you see leaked at the moment about taxes. Any article you read that says, oh, the government are thinking about this or thinking about that, think about where it's coming from. They might just be lying, like the Telegraph or the Express may come up with stuff that's just lies. But by and large, it's probably because the Treasury have leaked it to test the waters. It happens all the time before big budgets. But there we go. How much does capital gains tax bring in? Oh, that's a good question. Let me see if I can find it. 41 billion, next to nothing. Now, I will point out, this is last year, and capital gains tax was increased for this year. So I don't know how much extra it's going to be bringing in this year. But based on last year, although did the capital gains tax take place straight away? Actually, that may have happened straight away. I can't remember. In which case, that may have taken effect from last November. In which case, you're still talking about most of last year was under the old rates. But yeah, capital gains tax last year was 41 billion. It doesn't bring in a lot. So I am still in favour of bringing it in line with income tax rates. But even if you did that, it would bring it in. It would bring money in. It's worth doing, I think, unless there's some good reason not to. Why not increase capital gains and dividend tax? So dividend tax is an interesting one. So capital gains tax, she may well actually raise it again. She did raise it last year. She may raise it again. Dividend tax, I suspect not, and I'll tell you why. Even though people like you and I will think, why should people on passive income pay lower taxes? And I totally agree. But from a practical point of view, Labour at the moment are trying to encourage people to invest. So, for example, one idea that's been mooted, again, we don't know what's going to happen, but one idea that's been mooted is removing some of the benefits of ISAs, but just pure ISAs, not specialist ISAs like investment ISAs. So taking away some of the benefits of like normal ISAs. They may not get away with that because, again, that will screw over elderly people. They won't like it. So Labour may shy away from that one. But yeah, in general terms, people on passive income should pay at least the same rate of tax on people on income that derives from their labours, shouldn't they? So if you're getting money from dividends, which is passive income, you cannot even, in all honesty, say that there's any skill in knowing where to put your investments, because that's only if you're stupid enough or actually clever enough to make your own investments. Like if you're a full-time trader, most people, if they've got any brains, just get their bank to do it. They say, right, the banks offer investment funds and you just give them the money and they invest it. They have their own expert traders who invest it on your behalf. So, yeah, and you already get some benefit from dividends, because if you, as I am doing, I've done this as my new pension, basically. So from this year, I've started putting money in an investment ISA. So I don't pay any tax on the dividends from that. I'm limited in how much I can put into it. It's £20,000 a year, which is still a lot. But it's not what I'm paying into it at the moment, but I do hope to. But I don't pay any tax on that. So yeah, if you're already going to be putting £20,000 a year into an investment ISA, so any dividends you get off that, by the way, which is way higher than interest, any dividends you make. I mean, so far this year, I've been paying £1,000 a month into this thing, and it does go up and down. Obviously, every time Donald Trump says something stupid, it goes down, right? So it's not like money. It's not like interest, really. It's not money in the bank. It can go down as well as up. If we have an AI bubble burst, it'll all go. Well, it won't all go, but I'll lose it. But at the moment, it's made hundreds. I'm hundreds up on the deal, which is way more than if I'd put it into a savings account. Way more. So, yeah. But I just think that politically, if you increase the taxes on dividends, which they might, but if they did, does that reduce? They want people to invest. Basically, they want investment. They want investment. They want people to pay into investment funds. Does that reduce the chances of it? That's the question I would have there. They need to restructure it in a way that doesn't affect working people but ends up taxing higher bands more. That would be my instinct, yeah. I would suggest, if any, at the very least, if you're going to put up the basic rate, you must put up all the bands so that everyone pays the same proportional rate. Because if you just put up the basic rate by 1% and that's it, then those on lower incomes will be paying percentage-wise a larger amount of income tax. Percentage-wise, they'll be paying more than richer people. And the reason for that is someone earning less, as I said before, someone earning less than £50,000 a year, all of their income tax is the basic rate. So if it goes up by 1%, that means their income tax is increasing by 1%. Right, flat 1%. If they're earning much more than £50,000 a year, their income tax is basic rate plus, well, it depends on how much more, maybe higher and additional rate, or maybe just one. But only the basic rate's going up by 1%, which means that overall their tax liability will be going up by less than 1%. That's just a stunningly bad look. So that is a bad look. So if you're going to put up income tax at all, I would say you definitely need to put up the higher and additional rate. I would prefer it if you didn't put up the basic rate. I'd prefer that. But again, there will be lots of considerations, won't there? But I think it will look very, very bad if they increase income tax in such a way that not only does it not shield those working people they talked about, but if it hits them hardest. And it will hit them hardest if they do that. Labour should create new upper tax bands. Like I say, they could do that without breaching the manifesto. Silly that someone who earns £100,000 like a doctor, accountant or senior teacher is taxed the same as city bankers. £100,000 today is like 55,000 in 2005. Yeah, it is actually more than 100,000. There is another rate. It's like 100. I'm going to have to look up the bands now. I'm pretty sure it's about 125,000, or maybe 150,000. Let me have a look. It's definitely above 100. Oh no, it's 125,000. So yeah. Basically, yeah, you're right. If you are earning over £125,140 a year, you are paying the same rate of income tax as someone who's earning millions of pounds a year. Yeah. In fact, probably less, in all honesty, probably less, because the person earning millions of pounds a year has probably arranged, I mean, it depends. Some will just pay their fair share. We know that there's a group like Millionaires for Higher Taxes, and I can't remember what's it called now, I've forgotten now. But there's a group of millionaires, like Dale Vince is the most famous one, who are actually in favour of paying higher taxes. So they probably don't engage in a lot of tax avoidance. But yeah, if you've got millions, then you are more likely, because remember, if you're earning a certain amount of money, there's some of it goes on your cost of living, and the cost of living for someone on £100,000 a year more, because they're going to have a nicer house, aren't they? So the stuff that goes on their cost of living, they can't secrete away, they can't shove to the Isle of Man or anything. But if you're earning millions, then yeah, you're going to have an even bigger house than someone on £100,000 a year, but still, proportionally more of your income is just savings. And no one saves money because savings doesn't make you anything. So you'll invest it, and investment means ways to dodge tax. But there we go. 20% on a low income is felt much more than 40% on a higher income. Absolutely, yes, because a higher proportion of the lower income is in basic necessities. Yeah, and also, again, like I say, so if you're wealthy, you have a large income, then you're going to, you are going to pay more for some things. You are probably going to pay more for a car. You're going to pay more for your house, right? So there are higher costs. You're going to pay more for your clothes, right? But you pay the same amount for a tin of beans. You pay the same amount for petrol, assuming your car isn't a gas guzzler. Assuming, it's an expensive car, but, efficient. A litre of petrol still costs you the same, right? Unless you've got like like a big expensive sports car. But assuming you just got a more expensive but sensible car, you're paying the same for petrol, you're paying the same for the tube if you're in London, you're paying the same train fares. You might go first class, but you're still paying the same that anyone else on first class is going. You're paying the same for a lot of things, your groceries and stuff like that. So the more you earn, the more you can avoid legal evasion. Yeah, that's what it is. Tax avoidance, yeah. And you won't get rid of all tax avoidance unless there's like an international agreement, because you cannot stop people moving their money abroad. If you try, well, you can, but if you try and do that, people won't bring it into the country in the first place. So realistically, you cannot just stop people moving their money abroad. So you cannot stop all tax avoidance. But there we go. Wasn't Rishi Sunak's effective tax rate on all his income like 10% when he was PM? No, it wasn't that low, but it was lower than a nurse when he was making on an income of several million. And let me work it out. It was much more than 10%. But the point is, it was lower than a nurse's. That was the main thing that was pointed out. So it was lower than someone on a much lower income. Let me find it. Should be easy to find. Who's going to let me know? Let me get a calculator out. Here we go. Come here. For Christ's sake. Calculator. So it says he. Right, here it is. So he paid £508,308 in tax on just over £2.2 million. So we paid about 23% rate of tax. Whereas, let me just do a little, let's say you've got, what should we have? Nurses, obviously there's a range. What's the starting salary for a nurse? Let's have a look. NHS nurse. 29,970. By the looks of it. Actually, I'll do it for the same year because, to be fair, actually no, I'll do it for the same year that Rishi Sunak released his. So what tax year was that? 2024. So this will be 22-23. So I'll do it for 22-23. Just to be, even though a nurse then would have got a smaller amount, but I'm not going to those lengths. Come here, pissing phone. I just updated the software and it's been a pain now. Right, so they would pay 5, 6. Oh, actually no. To be fair, a starting nurse would have paid 19%. So maybe we're talking more like an experienced nurse. So he would have paid a higher tax rate than a starting nurse, although with way more money left over. Let's say, I'm just going to randomly say £40,000 a year, roughly. Oh, that'd be about 22. So actually, no, maybe the nurse thing was wrong. But either way, it was a lower rate of tax than some people who would be earning much less than him. But it was certainly much more than 10%. It was 23% he paid. UK is the tax haven for the rich, if I remember correctly. No, well, there's a lot of there's a lot of money laundering goes on, but that's illegal. In terms of tax avoidance, no, there's way better places than the UK for tax avoidance, but it does include some British overseas territories which are not themselves the UK. So like Cayman Islands, Isle of Man, Jersey, things like that. The UK itself is not great for tax avoidance. How about making everyone's tax records public like Finland? Yes, I think, does Sweden do it as well? I think Sweden might do it as well. Yes, I'm a big supporter of that. The problem is people are persuaded that their personal financial information, like their income and tax, it should be a matter as a private matter. No, it's a con. It's not, right? Or it shouldn't be. You're being conned, right? The reason why you're told that is so that bosses can have two people in an office doing the same work, same level of productivity. They're just as good as each other, but one of them gets £5,000 a year more than the other because they were better at negotiating their salary. That's wrong. That is wrong. Say UK isn't going to clamp down on tax evasion. No, it is. You say too lucrative business for City of London. No, it's not. It really isn't. It's not lucrative at all for us. It's lucrative for individuals, not for governments. The government are cracking down on tax evasion. They're actually cracking down on tax avoidance as well. In fact, as some people will have seen if you watch that video I did with that tax lawyer that time, he thinks they're doing it. He thinks they're catching some innocent people in the net, in fact. So no, the UK is absolutely cracking down on tax evasion. Because how do you do? What's the number one thing you do to crack down? Because remember, tax evasion is illegal. It's illegal. There's no question about it. You don't have to change any legislation or anything. It's already illegal, right? How do you crack down, excuse me, on tax evasion? One simple measure. You hire more tax inspectors. It's well known, tax inspectors always bring in more money than their salary, right? So what would you do if you're serious about tax evasion? You hire more tax inspectors. What did Rachel Reeves do immediately upon becoming Chancellor? She didn't wait for the budget, immediately hired a load more tax inspectors. So they are cracking down on it. Am I including the national insurance in that? Yeah, those calculations are based on national insurance as well. Yeah, total income-based deductions. So for Rishi Sunak, it also included his capital gains tax. Obviously, that wouldn't apply to a nurse in all likelihood. Income tax and national insurance for normal people is always around a third. It does depend. It does depend. Like if I do it for this year, so minimum wage is about 20. I can't remember exactly. Let's just stick it in because we're running out of time. About 20. Was it about £24,000 a year? So let's say about £24,000 a year. Your total tax rate would be, and this is everything, including national insurance, obviously just employees' national insurance. Your tax rate would be 13%. You've got to remember the allowance, the tax-free allowance is, I'll give you the exact figure, £12,579. So it's about £12,500. So the lower your income, the lower your effective tax rate. But that's little sucker, because it also, on a lower income you don't have, because remember you've got rent, and that's another thing. People on lower incomes are probably more likely to rent than have a mortgage, and rents keep going up, whereas your mortgage generally, it goes up with interest rates, sure, but it then comes down with interest rates. But someone who has a mortgage, 20 years into that mortgage, the amount they're paying for that mortgage is broadly what they were paying at the start of it. It's not much different. Whereas if you're renting, 20 years later, you're paying a hell of a lot more in rent. And if incomes do not keep up with the cost of rent, which they don't, then yeah, you're in trouble. So, but yeah, the actual rate, there is no standard rate of tax. It's very, very different for a wide range of workers. Let's go for 100% employment as tax inspectors. There'd be no one left to tax then. There'd be no one to tax. National insurance has a cap for the very rich. Yeah, it's a regressive tax. National insurance is it's why, like, no one these days, no one's in favour of national insurance. There was a particular purpose to it at a particular time, but these days, no. There's economists on the left and the right want to get rid of it. It's a bad tax these days. It is, because you say the very rich, there's a cap for the very rich. Also, people on a passive income don't pay. You don't pay national insurance on things like pensions. In fact, if you're a pensioner, you don't even pay national insurance on salary. So if you're a pensioner, but you do some, say, part-time work, you can do, there's nothing to stop you working as a pensioner. You don't pay national insurance. And if you look at it, so look at this person on £24,000 a year, right? So that's the lowest you should be on if you're a full-time worker. You're paying at the moment £914.40 a year national insurance, right? So it's about what, 75 quid, a bit over 75 quid a month. That's a significant amount of money. Whereas if you're a pensioner on £24,000 a year, you're not paying any national insurance. So straight away, a pensioner on £24,000 a year and I'm not after bashing pensioners, by the way, just to be clear, but I'm just going to point out, a pensioner on £24,000 a year, they've got the same costs, haven't they, as someone, as a worker on £24,000 a year. They may have less because they may actually have had a mortgage and they may have paid it off. But let's say they've got the same. So a pensioner on £24,000 a year has got the same living costs as a worker on £24,000 a year, but the worker on £24,000 a year pays over 900 quid extra in tax. So national insurance is an absolute pig of a tax. The problem is, how do you get rid of it? Because the obvious way to get rid of it, you can't just get rid of it because, let me have a look. Let me just go back to the thing. National insurance, £171 billion. 171 billion quid it brings in. How are you going to get rid of it? You're going to have to increase other taxes, and the sort of taxes lowered down. That's not going to do it. You basically have to fold it into income tax. Now, if you do that, then instantly what will happen is workers will then suddenly pay less tax because you'll only have to compensate. You won't have to raise extra tax revenues with it. So workers would pay less tax, but pensioners would suddenly pay more. A lot more. So basically, if you want to get on, be a millionaire or a pensioner. Well, I would say a millionaire because some pensioners are poor as well. But no, there's no such thing as a poor millionaire, is there? But anyway, we'll leave it. It turns out we did talk about taxes. I'll go over the poll. In the end, we had 40% of people who thought that Labour might get away, based on 428 votes, just to be clear, of a non-representative sample, yes. 40% of you thought Labour can get away with breaking that manifesto promise, 60% don't. I am minded, I don't know, but I think it's very risky. But it is what it is. We'll have to leave it there. Thanks for coming on, everyone. I've got loads of work to do. Have a great rest of day, and until next time, I'll see you later. Pensioners vote, yeah.